Welcome to HOD Live. We are here with three generations of preachers, of battles, of wonderful men of God. And our usual host or guest host or co-host, the ladies, are at a ladies' retreat. And so I was so kind. My father, Jesse Battle, who is returning to the show, and also Roscoe, Eric Jr., who has returned to the show, have agreed to be on HOD Live. My old man, rather reluctantly, but I twisted his arm, move his mic up for him.
Oh.
And Eric Jr., his girlfriend, all of our ladies are gone. So we are bachelors. After this, we're going to go out to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch a game. It's just us. So Bishop B, how you been feeling?
Doing good. Just working hard lately, but that's the way life goes.
Working hard?
I'd say so.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. How about you, Eric Jr.?
I've been good.
Been good. You're home from college?
Yeah.
How was your first semester?
It was good.
That's it?
Yeah.
How about
First
the second
semester.
semester?
Yeah, second semester was it wasn't bad. I just had work and RA stuff. Cause I'm an RA now, but
What's an RA?
Residential advisor.
Resident. So what do you do?
So I basically I'm the person to go to on the floor, and then sometimes I have to be on call. So if there's emergencies, I have the on-call phone. That's like once every couple weeks, and I'm like the main contact on the floor. But it's not bad.
It's not bad. You deal with, you're kind of like the campus senior upperclassman, I should say.
Yeah, kinda. But I mean, you can be a RA as a sophomore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, do you take care of the entire building or just that one floor?
Just the floor.
And how many students on the floor?
Well, it's split up since I'm in Grand Hall.
You can't see your grandfather. See there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm in Grand Hall, so there's a lot of people on my floor, so they split it up by wing. So anybody on the first wing is my wing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, the first year you were there, I remember the first semester we dropped you off. It was pretty rough. There was, 3 suicides on campus?
Something like that.
Something
I
like
think.
that?
Yeah.
Do you deal with a lot of mental health issues, drinking, alcohol, drug use, all that stuff?
I mean, I only became an RA this semester, so I didn't really get that much. Not since it was towards the end of the year, so I didn't really see much of that. I mean, there was alcohol in the building overall, but not in my room.
How do you handle alcohol infractions, drug infractions?
I mean, you're supposed to just write it up, and then you take a picture of it.
Take a picture of the alcohol the person drinking.
You take a picture of the bottles that you found, and then you take a picture. You're supposed to take a picture of the student IDs.
You take a picture of the bottle. You make sure it's empty first.
Yeah, you have to make sure it's empty. Yeah.
Do you
have to
empty
dump it out? Yeah, you have to dump it out.
Okay.
But I've never had to do it.
That's interesting.
Now, what if the student won't allow you to see the bottle, or doesn't allow you to come into his room or whatever, quad, whatever you call it?
Then you have to call the on-campus DPS, the on-campus police, kind of.
Okay.
And then the building coordinator.
I guess that's the last thing you want to do is
Yeah.
get the authorities involved.
Yeah, it's not. That doesn't happen much, and it's not even really the authorities. It's just on campus.
Yeah,
Like,
because your reputation would be mud, if you get
Yeah,
be a snitch. You know what happens to snitches, don't you?
No, I haven't dealt with that really.
That's good.
So
Now, do you deal with girls and boys? Is your floor just boys?
girls and boys? Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. How do you keep yourself safe from all of the, dealing with young ladies and knowing that it can be dicey and, things can happen. Not you doing something,
Yeah.
but allegations and charges and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, there's not really much you would have to do for that to happen. Like, you're basically, as an RA, you're just kind of a resource. So I mean, anything that's super serious, you would call DPS. So you're not really hands on with a lot of stuff.
Wow.
Or you call the RA on call, so you're still not hands on necessarily.
called the R what?
The RA on call.
What's that?
So like whoever the RA is who has the on-call phone, who's like the first response to any sort of like emergencies.
Okay.
So you will call them and they'll go handle it.
Bishop, you, Beatrice, know he and Camille are RAs.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a married tag
No,
team.
different buildings.
well, we got to do the marriage
We were in
first.
different buildings last year.
So, but a question there: how do you have transgender and all those students on your floor?
I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't think so.
You know? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, are you both in the same building on the same floor?
Like me and who?
Camille.
No, she's in she last year she was in a whole different building.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Separate. Do you remember when I went to SLU?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's what 1950.
No. this is when you went to UMSL.
Long time ago.
When you went to UMSL. But he stays in the same building I was in, that big tall building.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's where
Greasy
you
Day.
are.
Well, that's where I was my freshman year. Now I'm in Grand. I'm right next to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you like being an RA?
I mean, it's okay. Like I like it. It's like a job, so it's not like, but it's cool. It's not bad.
Because his tuition gets
Yeah.
reduced.
Yeah, you get free
Yeah,
housing.
free housing.
So
Oh.
yeah, and it's not too hard. It's not bad.
So that
You're just on
is
call
that the pay
sometimes.
you get?
Well, you get a stipend. Well, last year it was, since we have to sit desk, so we have mandatory desk shifts. So you have to cover the front desk. It's before 12 a.m. and then once 12 a.m. hits, campus police or like the outside security that they hire cover the desk. But you just have to cover the desk, and when you cover the desk, you get a stipend for it. So it was like $100 a month, and now they changed it to you get $600 at the beginning of the year. And at the beginning of each
600
semester,
cash money.
you get put in your account, direct deposit,
okay.
yeah. At the
So-
beginning of each semester.
That's instead of the $100 a month.
Yeah,
So you get nothing during the year other than the $600.
yeah. You just get the free housing
And the
now.
free housing, okay.
Yeah,
And
Now-
tuition is through the roof.
Yeah, no. Yeah. It's St. Louis U.
Yeah. His resume is pretty good. He has the RA. He's interning at Worldwide Technology.
Right.
Yeah.
He did the camera stuff for the SLU basketball team, and so God is really blessed in
For sure.
terms of his
yeah, for sure.
the resume.
Now, you do that freelance, or do you work for the sports department
Yeah, I work for SLU basketball.
and they pay you?
Yes. Well, I work for the athletic department as a whole, but I primarily do basketball.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Okay.
It's funny. Do you know that your grandfather was in the newspaper business for a long time?
You were?
Yeah.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I remember he used to work for the
I didn't know that.
he's worked for the North County Journal,
The journal
Oh, wow.
newspapers, yeah.
and he would take me with him to these seedy grocery stores that had fly strips in the basement of them. This place called Sure Save that
Yeah, I remember
it was
that.
spelled Sure Salve because they didn't have E.
That's funny.
And he would take me around to these different accounts. In fact, he used to write this weekly article using my name,
I did.
and it was rather inflammatory, wasn't it?
They were so aware. In fact, I found one of those articles about a month ago.
Brother, what was it about?
It was the one about why the
You're blocking him.
why the football Cardinals were not winning their games. Obviously, it was fictitious. They played on Sunday, and so I condemned the fact that they were playing on Sunday rather than Bushwick out on Sunday. And I got a lot of
they
negative
came for
comments
you,
about
huh?
that. Yeah.
That's funny.
And then the one that was worst was one Super Bowl. I wish that both teams would win.
That's
Of course, it didn't bother me because I wrote him under the name E. Fitzgerald.
Oh,
No one knew it was
they
me.
came for me.
That's funny.
It's amazing how even now, I mean, time has changed with that because it's everything. There was a time when stores would be closed on Sunday.
Yeah, right.
Now they're
Right. Now
they're
it's a
open
regular day,
and,
yeah.
and things like that. There's this Christian in New Jersey. There's this Christian like a summer camp,
Mm-hmm.
and they own a part of the Jersey Shore beach.
Oh my.
And
okay.
so for Sunday, they closed, and they would close the beach because they would, observe the Lord's Day,
Right.
kind of like Chick-fil-A. Well, people in the town kept going on their beach, although it was closed for Sunday. And so they actually sued this Christian camp organization to open their beach up, and the judge sided with them. This is recently, they had to open their beach up.
Oh wow.
And so basically saying that, you can't close a beach for religious purposes and things of that nature. And so they have to open the beach up.
That's interesting. So who pays for the operation?
Well, it's
for
not
that
really
day?
operation. They just have to, the building is closed, but they own that section of the beach. The
So they
judge,
don't have lifeguards or any
they
maintenance
don't have lifeguards,
crews?
right.
So there's no cost
there's
involved?
no cost. They just
I
said
see.
you can't close the.
I see, because-
But there's been a cultural shift
Yeah.
as relates to Sunday.
So I remember when you could not buy liquor on Sunday, you could not buy tobacco, you couldn't buy cigarettes on Sunday.
Even though you wanted to.
No, I never wanted to, no. But you
you
couldn't
could
buy
do
any of
it.
that stuff. And
Yeah.
all the stores were closed on Sunday.
really?
So, but now I think everything's open except Chick-fil-A.
How did you get into the newspaper business?
Well, I was looking for, I wasn't really looking for a job. I went to the newspaper office to put an ad in the newspaper and to see if they would print an article that I had written. Well, I met the boss's son.
Is that Rick?
No, this was, I can't think of his name now. I don't remember his name. But at any rate, he asked me if I would be interested in coming to work for them. I said, well, no, not really. Well, he called me a day or two later and offered me a very compelling job whereby I would have very little work to do.
It's kind of job we like.
Yeah. And
That's the
it was
kinda
mostly
job you
making public
like.
appearances, speaking on behalf of the newspaper, representing that segment of the newspaper. They had 49 different papers within the metropolitan area. And there was one paper in North St. Louis that, while it was a regular paper called the North Side Journal, there was no one in the whole operation that represented the North Side Journal. So whenever they have a function that required someone to go out and represent them, either the boss would have to go or he'd have to send a volunteer, and that became rather problematic because the people in the North Side community became resentful over the fact that
About North St. Louis.
North St. Louis
Uh-huh.
became resentful over the fact that they had no person who represented North St. Louis. So my job was primarily to represent North St. Louis. And it was very little work involved. You go in the morning, see if there's anything you need to do. If not, good day. Well, after a while, though, I started doing things like writing articles. I finally talked the newspaper into hiring a photographer so we could go in and take pictures and have things for the paper. We would simply strip stories out of other papers and put them in Offside. I remember one Sunday.
Oh, you would.
We take stories like from the West County Citizen, from Clayton Citizen, from North County Journal, from anywhere, and stick them in. And I remember one summer it was really hot. Hot outside, like 100 degrees, and the kids in North St. Louis, the only way they got water was to open the fire hydrants, and which was illegal. The fire department would come and close them back, and then they threatened to arrest parents, things like that. So one day they put a picture of Ladue family in this big old house in Ladue with this huge swimming pool in the ground and all these little white kids swimming in the swimming pool. And it was on the front page of the North Side Journal. So I went down to the room where we actually laid the paper out, and I saw it. So I snatched the article off, tore it up into little bits. I said, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to insult these people. by putting this on the front page of this paper. Well, and that was the day before the paper went to press. So I had to scramble to get something and fill that plug, which we did. And then after that, I just said to the boss, listen, if I'm going to keep doing this, we need a real paper. I mean, real articles, real ads, real everything that are relative to North St. Louis, and not just dropping stuff that has nothing to do with these people.
Would you say, is St. Louis more racist than other cities? Is it the same? Is it more? Is it a different kind of racism?
Well, it's pretty much the same. I mean, all over America, we have this crazy racism. Now, some cities are more overt with it than others. St. Louis is pretty quiet, except that black folk live where black folk live, and non-blacks live where non-blacks live, and that's it. Now, every now and then, and more now than before, there'd be a migration of perhaps a black family or 2 or 3 black families. And as you know, I've always lived in neighborhoods where there were a very limited black population. I don't know if you recall, but when we bought the house in Creve Coeur back in, back in the, maybe it was 85. And you were out in front of the house in the car. I don't know if you remember that. The police came and wanted to arrest you for loitering outside this house. And you said, I live here. They said, no, you don't live here. There's no way you live here.
My friend, you don't know Anthony, do you?
Yeah.
You know how you know Anthony?
You talked about it before.
He had just we were in high school.
Yeah.
He had just gotten a new car, and so he came over to show me. And so we were standing in front, and he was like, had the hood up and stuff like that. Then the police came, and and what are you doing out here, and all that stuff.
Right. I remember that. And of course, that was a racist thing. I remember one time when I first moved into the house, I was in the driveway getting something out of the car. Police came up with guns drawn.
Wow.
And I said, no, this is my house. No, there's no black people living in this subdivision. We know everybody who lives here. Well, then you must have missed me because I've been living here for a while. And of course, I went to the chief of police, and his comment was, this is really not a black neighborhood, and so you have to let us know you're moving into this neighborhood, which is kind of ridiculous.
It's crazy.
So St. Louis is pretty much like anywhere else. I mean, you have those practices almost anywhere. I remember one house we bought, I don't remember where it was. I think it was Creve Coeur as well. I was in there painting the house before we moved in, and a lady knocked on the door and said, is the owner here? I said, well, I am the owner. She said, no, that's impossible. You can't be the owner of this house because we have a covenant restriction that says that these houses can only be sold to people of Anglo-Saxon descent. So
what Anglo-Saxon means, Roscoe?
White people.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So I ended up going to court and having that restriction removed from the deeds.
Wow.
So and of course that's all racism. But if you don't venture into these areas, you'll never know that because you'll never be confronted with that.
What your sister Regina Fowler commented, they knew you were black, ? So what would your advice though be, like Roscoe or Eric Jr. is 21 years old and 21. He is full of ideas, most of them bad, but full of ideas, full of energy. He wants to go out and conquer the world. And racism will make you upset. There's encounters like being stopped in front of the house, the police car, yes, right. Having someone knock your door, it's your owner. What advice would you give young black males especially so they can handle these situations in a way that's not going to get them killed? Because sometimes if they handle it the wrong way, then it could be very violent. How do you fight the system in a productive way?
Well, the one thing that's important, I think, and that's something that young, not just blacks, but any minority in any area where
turn his mic around a little bit.
Any area where you are among the minority, and you're having to deal with the majority population, you want to first of all try to articulate as intelligently as you can. one of the things.
Up here cursing and
Yeah, no, that
MFs
right,
and all
right,
that stuff.
right.
Yeah.
And even if you're right, the fact is, if the person that you're talking with gets antagonized by you, then he's going to become combative, even though you haven't. Well, since he's got the badge, he's got the gun, he's got the authority, he's going to win, at least for the moment.
Right.
Now, the unfortunate thing is sometimes that moment becomes your last moment.
Exactly.
If you allow yourself to get carried away. So keep your head, stay cool, stay calm, deal with it to the extent that you can. And when you can't, just like, for instance, the police that came up in the driveway with guns drawn. Now, once I was able to satisfactorily prove to them that I lived in this house, well, I went to the chief of police. Well, I didn't get any results except an alibi. I have another dear friend whose kids were in, and again, I'm going back probably 40 years ago. His kids were in Parkway School District. Well, they were being mistreated as a lot of black kids were, because I don't think you went to Parkway. I think you went to
I
Ladue.
did. I went
You went to Parkway
yeah.
too?
Mhm.
Well,
I was mistreated
your
too.
sister went to Parkway, and so the grandfather, not the father, the grandfather went to deal with this because of his community stature. He was pretty well known
Big guy,
in the
yeah.
community, and he went to the superintendent. The superintendent said to him, I understand your frustration, but you have to understand that the teachers who work in this district are not hired to deal with black kids.
Wow.
They're hired to deal with middle class and upper class white kids. So you can't expect these teachers to know how to handle the problems of a black kid as if they're problems that are inconceivable in another kid. Well, this grandfather got angry, and of course, what can you do? You just have to educate your kid that expect this, when this happens, do this or do that. But the worst thing they could do is get angry, start fussing and cussing and acting like they're going to fight. And of course, sometimes the ego rises up, and nobody's going to talk to me like that. Nobody's going to, and that becomes a major problem, because they will actually deal with you, and you don't want that to happen.
As you get older, do you become less bothered by stuff like that, or do you just choose not to deal with it? As you get older, do you stop fighting things or fights you used to fight as a younger man, or do you just not care anymore?
Well, no, I wouldn't say you don't care. You try to fight them in a different way. I used to have a very good friend by the name of Jeremiah Wright, and you probably heard of him
right.
back during the.
You know who he is?
Yeah,
Okay, who is he?
I've heard the name.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was a preacher who, when President Obama ran for president,
That's right. I learned
was
about
accused
that.
of saying, this negative thing about America.
I learned about that in my African American Studies class in college.
And the unfortunate thing about that, though, is they're probably not teaching it right. They're trying to say that Jeremiah Wright got up and said declaratively, God blank America. This is a church setting, so you can't be cussing. Okay, God.
His mother's watching.
Right,
I don't know
right.
why they're supposed to be in retreat, but they're watching HOD Live. What a shame.
But he didn't do that. The funny thing was, I was at his church. It was a sermon he preached, and in that sermon, he said that we say in our pledge or in our whatever we do, God bless America. And God will bless America if America walks in the order that God has deemed it to walk in. But if America does not walk in that order, then God will not bless America. God will damn America.
Oh, where's my sound effects? You're
And,
right.
and that's what he said. So they isolated a sound bite where they only had those three words, and they had Jeremiah Wright saying repeatedly, God de-America, God de-America, God, and that has nothing to do with any reality. But that's the way racists paint pictures. In fact, this whole Trump thing that we're dealing with, you see very live examples of. You watch what happened, but then you hear the narrative after it. It's a whole different situation.
Right. And I do want to talk about that and get your take on that. Yesterday, Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, was found guilty on all 34 charges in one of his first of many criminal trials. He is, as it stands today, a convicted felon.
Right.
I believe this is the first time we've had a convicted felon as the front runner. And the last time, according to the latest polls, he's projected to win the presidency. He's leading Joe Biden.
Right.
And so him being a felon does not bar him from running or from holding office. In fact, they say that, this whole thing will be caught up in appeals for a long time. Basically, it has no impact on him,
right,
other than the fact that, and it could have positive impact on him. But the political system has been so, I think the thing that gets damaged is not necessarily Trump, but the political system and the fabric of this country, where nothing has any value anymore. And we're seeing these offices just kind of drugged through the mud. What presidents have you lived through? You lived through Lincoln,
George Washington.
lived through. Have you ever seen anything like this? I guess Nixon was, but was Nixon like this?
Nixon was not like this, because when the shame of what Nixon did hit the news, Nixon resigned. Trump, of course, what he has done makes what Nixon did look like a Sunday school picnic. But Trump has not only not resigned, but he has not even accepted any culpability. I heard him say yesterday, he said, "I've done nothing. I'm a innocent man. I'm a very innocent man." Oh, come on, Donald Trump. And then the thing that really upsets me is that you've got highly intelligent legislators, senators, congressmen, who know that he has
Right.
been filed for all the years that we have been associated with him, but yet they
Defending
stand
him.
by him and defend him.
Do you think Trump is smart? Do you think he's not smart?
I think he's slick.
You think
I think
slick?
he's a conniver. He has slicked his way through life. He has a very negative racketeering kind of mentality. And he has made it that way. His father was the same way. And I did a little bit of research on his father from a psychological
Who was his
standpoint.
father?
Well, the senior Mr. Trump. He was a real estate developer. And of course, he left quite a bit of money to his son, who claimed that he picked himself up by his own bootstraps and built his own empire. Well, that's not true. His daddy left him millions of dollars so that he could basically continue the work
That's
that
one
his
thing
father
I
was
agree
doing.
with, though.
What's
His
that?
daddy left him millions of dollars.
Well, but see, you see the result, though. You see the result.
I don't care.
So if you
I'll
leave
take the
Roscoe,
result. No, I'm talking about
if
you. I'm
leave
talking about
Roscoe
this.
millions of dollars.
If you leave me $1 million,
Roscoe will be a
if you leave
conniving,
me $1 million,
dishonest
I'll
crook.
leave him whatever's left of that $1 million, which will be a couple hundred by the time I go through it.
Which
Okay,
would
by the time
be
I blow through it.
Debts that he has not paid.
Right. If you leave me $1 million, I'll channel him whatever's left.
No, there's never been not a president like Donald Trump, but never been a politician that on a national level like Donald Trump.
What is it about? Okay, so in Mississippi during the Civil Rights Movement, there was a governor, George Wallace.
Right.
He stood
Well,
on the steps, segregation
Was he in
today,
Mississippi?
or maybe Alabama.
Alabama? Yeah, right.
So obviously you have very racist folks in politics, but they accepted that. But like you said, Donald Trump is different. He is it's not just a racism; it's also a lack of morality,
Absolute
indecency,
lack of morality,
right? And so, but what is it about America 2020, 2022, 2024 that produces politicians? Because it's not just him; it's the little congressmen that act like him.
Yeah.
What is it nowadays that is producing people like that?
Well, a simple answer is that one word: racism. See, the problem with white America is that they are becoming the minority in America. In fact, it's predicted within the next 5 to 10 years, white America will in fact be the minority population. And they're struggling now to preserve their right to exist in a superior fashion. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. And so those who are, I want to say uneducated or ignorant, but that's not true anymore, because even the educated ones are just as ignorant as the uneducated ones as it relates to social graces. So, but the fact is they're fighting to preserve something that they have deemed and has been deemed since this country started to be that which gives them the right to do what they want to do. There's a preacher, black preacher, by the name of Mac King. I can't remember his either his first name or middle name, but Mac King. No relationship to Martin Luther King, but he preached a sermon. Many years ago. He's deceased now, but he actually named all of the treachery of white America as it relates to this struggle to hold on to their superiority. Well, obviously, as their population dwindled and the populations of color, and I say plural because this includes everybody but white America, but Anglo-Saxons. Well, as that population increases and the white population decreases, then for those people who are struggling to deal with life, which is the people that Trump appeals to in a big way, it becomes a major problem with them. But that's all rooted in racism.
How has the UPC, let's just take it to
You mean
church.
UPC Church?
Yeah, well, what I'm asking, how has the Pentecostal Apostolic Church, because that's what we're part of, typically responded to racism?
Yeah, it's Mac. What's his first name? Carter.
Yeah.
Mac King Carter.
Mac
That's it.
King Carter.
Mac, M-A-C-K.
Where's he
King
from?
Carter.
Where's he out of?
He's from Louisiana. That's where he's from.
Okay.
But he was known for giving sermons that dealt with the not just the social climate of his day.
What denomination was it?
He's Baptist, National Baptist Convention. But he dealt with how we got where we are. And he tells a story about one time he's invited to speak for the businessmen's breakfast or something like that downtown. Big thing once a year, kind of like what we used to have here with the governor every year, and I've gone to a few times. But when he got to speak, his wife tried to get him not to go because she knew him. Well, he dealt with all the things that Governor DeSantis would not allow to be said in Florida, because of they don't want the truth of racial imbalances to come out. Well, he did it, and he did that. And every one of those guys got so angry with him, it was absolutely amazing. Wow. But it's guys like that who used to cry loud, and as the Bible says, spare not. Well, now we're trying to get along. We're trying to blend. We're trying to tap into some of these economic resources that we get by just being silent as to things that hurt us and that ultimately hurt them, not the things, but the conversation about the things.
Would you say to a large degree a lot of us have been co-opted?
Great, very much so, especially preachers.
Yeah.
And you talk about Pentecostal preachers. We have been so uninvolved in the mainstream of what's going on in our community until Trump showed up. Now, and you mentioned UPC. Well, not just UPC, but a lot of these white evangelical churches jumped on the Trump bandwagon.
Yeah. Paula White was
Paula White
made her money off black congregations.
Absolutely. And she was an independent preacher, but when it became clear that the UPC was promoting and praying for and pushing their members to vote for Trump and saying such ridiculous, ungodly things like Trump is sanctioned by God and God placement. I mean, it was, high up people in that church. Well, again, this is part of their struggle to keep their relevance alive while the minority populations who banded together and from a census standpoint was the dominant culture, the dominant race in America. And so people no matter what their religious persuasion is, people are still people.
Right.
And so that's why we have such a problem with sin, because while a person is now regenerated by way of sanctification, he's still a sinful person. And he struggles every day. And I think you said something like that in your Bible class the other night. They struggle every day, even though they're Holy Spirit filled, they're walking with God as best they can. They're still having to deal with the ugliness of sin because of the ugliness of humanity.
Right.
And and I know the Bible is very replete with its indications. We're born in sin. We're shaped in iniquity. In sin that our mothers conceive us, and on and on and on. And all of this just tells us what our native statue is and what we are in terms of our actual personality. We have to overcome that. And when you let your humanity become more dominant than your spirituality, then you're gonna buy this nonsense.
That's true. One of the issues I have with our white brothers and sisters, and there's no political test to be a born again believing Christian. You can be Democrat, Independent, Republican.
Right.
But I think what they don't understand is Trump is something different, and it's okay to say you want borders enforced, or you want tax cuts for business, or things that are traditional Republican platform, whatever. But to endorse Trump as a person, to almost deify him in some cases, and that's what he has his own Bible now, or at least the Trump Bible that is a King James Bible with a whole bunch of "Make America Great Again" stuff on it. For Christians to almost deify him, I don't think they understand how disrespectful and hurtful that is to people who, if he wins election, because his next agenda and platform, if we thought his first term was radical, this next term is going to be extremely radical because he has nothing to lose.
Right.
These court cases are making him angry. He's looking for payback and vengeance, and so to endorse him as a almost deify him without any caveats is incredibly disrespectful to people who could be hurt by his candidate. I don't think they get that part.
Well, the truth is, it's not just the minority communities that are going to be hurt by him. He's going to hurt everybody. I mean, he's even going to hurt the people who are ultra conservative. And he has already. I mean, for instance, the status of respect for the law in America has been minimized incredibly. So he's hurting everybody. He's hurting the whole world, for that matter. But again, our society has become dog eat dog, every man for himself. And many of these politicians, it's just, what can I get out of this? And it doesn't matter what they have to do. I mean, a guy like Ted Cruz, who was very vocal against the Trump nonsense, is now his nursing baby. He's sucking his titties. That's his survival. We'll delete that part. And that's really what's going on with otherwise sensible people who are buying into this Trump narrative, not because it's good. Right. It's because I can be somehow aggrandized in some way, economically, politically, in terms of power, in terms of, it goes back to what has always plagued the world. Right. People who want more. Right. More. It's like this avarice personality has taken over in such a way that it has become the dominant way of thinking.
What would you, and part of that, I guess, with this new, court cases and his election and the mainstreaming of almost this radical, I don't care immorality, which has trickled down into churches, institutions, schools.
Of course.
And nowadays, people think that it's okay to basically do whatever. And before, there were things that people wouldn't say, and because it was just too racist or too anti-Semitic. But now they say that because he's made it mainstream. Another thing I want to ask you and get your take on this, Roscoe, is that Trump will throw the church a bone by coming out and saying he wants to reverse transgender and LGBT stuff, and he will speak in biblical language, and some will buy into, meaning that they will assume that he is, and some of the Christian supporters of him think that he is on a mission by Jesus Christ to Christianize or re-Christianize this country, and because of little snippets he says. And yet I think it's kind of like the bait and switch, because if you don't listen to those sound bites, but look at the policies, look at what's happening, and that will paint the story of where we're headed. And I mean, that's just my take on it. What do you think, Gen Z?
About what part?
There's been a lot.
Roscoe says, I wasn't paying attention.
There's been a lot, Roscoe.
I mean,
By the way, Roscoe is Eric Jr.
Yes, Eric
His mother
Fitzgerald
named
Jr.
him Eric Fitzgerald Jr. His daddy named him Roscoe, and it appears that Roscoe has stuck.
That's right.
no, it hasn't. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's wild to see, I guess. I mean, this is like the first I've experienced of it, but it's because,
First experience what?
of a president like this, but that's because, this
see,
is
you
my
grew up
first
under
example.
Barack
That's what I'm
Obama.
saying. That's
Yeah.
my first example.
Because
So, like, I
who
can't
was
compare
before
it
Barack
to
Obama. George
George
W.
Bush.
You
I was
remember him,
1
do you?
years old. Yeah,
Okay.
I was like 1 year old.
Should have been in politics
I
then.
thought Bill Clinton was before Barack
Bill
Obama.
Clinton was after
It was-
H.W.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
father.
right.
And it was
Okay,
George
right. I'm
Bush
sorry.
when I was born, but I didn't know anything about it.
right.
And like, I didn't become like aware of politics until I was
Well, you didn't need to,
like,
Roscoe.
yeah, I was. It took me a while because I was a kid. So this is like the first time I've seen something like this.
Your
So it's-
generation is getting very, very radical in some degrees.
Yeah,
There are a lot of very right-wing
yeah,
young people too.
yeah, yeah. There are, and I think a lot of. I think
He went to the protest at SLU for the Gaza.
Yeah,
Oh, did you?
yeah. I got
Wrapped
some.
himself up in the Palestinian flag.
I did not.
Him and Camille were
I did
out
not
there
do that.
selling bean pies. It
No,
was very-
no.
My daughter Jessica is in Atlanta right now,
Yeah.
and I was talking with her yesterday. So she said she was going to go sightseeing in Atlanta today. They got there yesterday evening. So I said, "You
I
going to go
thought
see?"
they were going out the country.
They were. They were in
did.
Spain.
Oh, they came
got
back.
back
Okay.
yesterday evening.
You know
the
about
flight
this?
landed.
I know they were in Spain. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's going to take the day and go sightseeing with Chelsea, LaQuandra, and all that whole crew. So I said to her, "You're going to go see Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King's church." And, oh no, he's not from Atlanta. He's from Alabama someplace. Or I said, yeah, I was really shocked that this girl didn't
Sellouts.
know that Martin Luther King pastored a church in Atlanta, the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and that's where his cultural center is, and that's where he rose to prominence. Well, she didn't even know this, and so I say that to say that a lot of these young people they're out of touch with the struggle that we have come through. And I was saying a little while ago, that's what Jeremiah Wright's problem was. He grew up in that struggle, being raised in Virginia and saw racism firsthand. I didn't see it as much as he did. And then Jeremiah's a bit older than me. I think Jeremiah's probably 85 years old. So he was really in the thick of this whole racial thing. Coming from an educated family, his father was professional, was a preacher. His mother was a professional, and he always lived in neighborhoods that we weren't supposed to live in. And so he caught a lot of that. And by the time he reached the point that he reached, he was just sick of it all. And that's the problem with a lot of us older people. We're just sick of it. And then we're angry at our young people for not knowing more about it.
It's because they don't teach it.
Don't know anything.
It's 'cause-
Read a book, son.
No, it's
Get a
'cause-
book. Get off the
It's not
Instagram
why,
and the
no.
Tic Tac.
No, it's because they don't teach it in schools a lot of times.
But see,
And
you got to understand now.
Yeah, and then you have to learn it for yourself. But a lot of people is like if you're
But
in
do you know that most of your learning in life will not be in school?
No, I agree with that.
So school is a
Well, I
very
mean, I
small
know this. I
amount
know
of
this.
learning.
Yeah, I know
Get 'em,
this stuff.
get 'em.
But I'm saying like some people they don't learn it in school, and so they don't know where to look for it either. And so that's the
School
problem.
is really not for education. It's
It's
for
for
credentialing.
certification.
Yeah.
Credentials. Right. You have to learn in life. I don't remember which principle I have in my book, but I talk about this learning business and how peer learning is probably the most powerful, most dominant form of learning for most people in life.
What's peer learning?
What you learn from the association of the people you deal with.
That can be dangerous, though.
It's very dangerous, yes.
Deal with,
Right, but that's why parents have to exercise some restraint over who's involved and to what extent is that peer group involved. That's why, for instance, you could hang out with Anthony and Leroy when you were coming up, but you could hang out with Musa and I don't know,
Mustafa.
some radical person.
Well,
so you said what I'm
right,
saying.
yeah.
Because that impacts a kid very strongly.
Right.
And it shapes his thinking.
That's true. Parents, I think nowadays are, and it's not, these young people are products of us, and we are products of you.
Of course,
And
yes.
so I think for a while, it's been kind of taking their hand off of and letting, because we've been programmed now to let them grow and do and don't hamper them and let them explore and be free and stuff like that, which is true to an extent, but
To an
they
extent,
still
yeah.
need
They need parental
guidance and direction.
Right, boundaries,
You know,
yeah.
that's how conviction and morality is passed down through
Yes.
generation.
Right.
But if the parents don't really believe it, then how can they pass it down? And I
Right.
think that the church and morality and the way we did spirituality has to a large degree decayed and has atrophied within us and has not been passed down.
That's true,
you know.
absolutely.
Interesting fact about Atlanta, we were going to move to Atlanta at one point.
Yeah.
In
Oh,
fact,
wow.
we were headed down there. There was this, back in the 80s, there was this guy who, Atlanta was going through this child murder. There was a serial killer who was killing
yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And we would
Killing black kids.
Black kids,
Primarily black kids, yeah.
So we would go down there and they would check the hotel room and, it was this whole thing around the country. They arrested a black man for doing it, but later on, it seems to be the case that he had nothing to do with
Right.
this Atlanta child murder stuff. But that's I remember that.
And the funny thing about that story, which your dad may or may not be aware of, we were buying a house there. And the house we were buying was in a subdivision called Niskey Lake Woods. And the last body that they found almost directly across the street from the house that we were going to buy.
Now, Ross, you know what that means? They were trying to kill me. They were setting me up. I'm beginning to connect the dots.
That sounds
They was
like Trump,
trying to.
doesn't it?
They were trying to
That sounds
set
like
me.
the Trump
It's
man.
right. I was railroad. They were trying to set me up. They bought a house right next door. You know, I see it back there.
Roscoe, you got Trumps all around you. But no, and that's what stopped us from going there, because we decided at that point that we were not going to buy that house, and thus we canceled the whole deal.
Now, what were you all moving to Atlanta for?
Well, we didn't.
I mean, what was
So
the
weren't
point of
moving
moving
to
to
Atlanta.
We were at
We
one
were
point
just
we were
going
going
through
to
the
Atlanta.
motions.
We were supposed to move to Detroit. I mean, we were
Well,
moved
Detroit,
all over the
I
place.
accepted a church in Detroit. So
Then they kicked him out. So, yeah,
no,
had
no,
to come
that's
back
not
here.
what happened. You're talking about parental restraints. When I got to Detroit, before we actually moved there, I had the process or the challenge of getting these kids enrolled in school.
Yeah.
You know, Toya and Eric, and they were both doing fairly well in school. Toya better than Eric, but doing fairly well.
Oh.
And so I didn't want to put them in a bad school system. Well, here's what happened. I looked at a house. The first house I looked at was owned by the assistant superintendent for Detroit Public Schools. So when she learned that I was moving there from St. Louis, she said, "Oh, I did some work for St. Louis." She told me who she was. She said, "I did some work for St. Louis. I was a consultant for the Parkway School District. And when they achieved that blue ribbon status, I was one of the consultants who helped them get there." She said, "Are you bringing your kids from Parkway?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Oh, no, please don't do that. These schools are horrible in Detroit. I'm the assistant superintendent. The schools are horrible." She said, "You can't get them in a private school. Don't bring them here."
See, I wanted to go to Detroit.
Well, I'm sure you
I wanted
did.
to go to Atlanta.
But see, he also wanted to be in a plane that was about to crash.
Did.
And it didn't crash, and he was upset.
Oh, yeah, you told that story before.
But
Yeah, you told
so I started applying for private schools. They were all filled up.
Right.
I got the closest I could get was a 2-year waiting list. And so I decided there's no way in the world I'm going to do this and then sacrifice the future of these two kids, because if they come up here, they're not going to have the same academic standing.
Well, I
and
didn't
they're not
have it
gonna do-
here though, so
But you had the
Right.
potential, though.
Okay.
You see, you get there, you lose potential.
You're showing your stomach on camera. This
I'm
is the
stretching.
PG. We're trying to.
stretching.
You're right, Aunt Regina. We're trying to be PG. I got these Roscoe and
So
but
that's part of what parents have to do in order to make sure
Right.
that the future for the kids gives them a position so that they can make a difference
Right.
in society and also in life.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember, and part of it would be, obviously those cities are much more vibrant than St. Louis. And I guess growing up in St. Louis, it's more laid back, more slow pace. As a young person, you want to go out and explore.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about the environment, because it's not that you can't do well in those environments, but
Right.
but for kids who are raised in an environment, they're used to it.
Yes,
But for
yes.
transplants,
Right.
you could easily, get there
Right.
and just kind of wild out.
And Detroit has produced some wonderful citizens.
Absolutely.
It's just that to go from a Parkway school district to a Detroit city schools would have been absolutely horrible.
Right.
And so that became a
I've
problem.
always liked Detroit, though.
Yeah, well, I like Detroit too. I'm going there in a couple weeks.
Well, not really Detroit. See, Roscoe thinks I'm a Neanderthal. We had a dead squirrel in our driveway. I don't know how it died. And so I told Roscoe I had to remove it. He said, how'd you get rid of it? I said, I picked it up. He said, with what? I said, with my hands. So I picked up the squirrel with my hands, so he was just aghast at that.
You used
He
a
said,
shovel to
"You used a
pick
shovel."
it
I said, I
up.
washed my hands
You used a
afterwards.
shovel or something. No.
But Roscoe's a pretty
He's
boy.
dead. No, he's just dead, and he's gonna get a disease.
Well, we had a snake in our house a little while ago, and my wife
Roscoe was an omen.
it was in the bathroom, and she went in, picked it up, took it outside.
See, Denise's country too, though.
So it's just one of those things.
Well, that's interesting. But so in terms of systems and navigating systems, I think one of the greatest skills to learn is how to deal with and navigate systems in terms of the injustice, not letting it get the best of you, succeeding within that system. That's a lost art, because in the end of the day, I don't care how much talent you have, how smart you are, if you can't navigate these systems,
Right.
these systems are set up to close you out.
They will
You know.
smother you. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I wish we could learn more about navigating these systems. I wish that we would spend more time, and our elders would spend more time helping our young people, and even when I say young, not his, I mean my age too, navigate these systems so we don't become victims, or we don't, just stand on the outside and feel we can't engage.
Well, by the time you reach 50, which you will be reaching in a few minutes,
Where's my gift?
your navigation has
I
already
want
been set.
I want a birthday gift. My what's been set?
Your navigation has already been
Well,
set.
no.
Roscoe has to navigate.
God is not through with me yet.
No, he's not through
God's
with you yet.
not through with me yet.
But your course has already been charted.
But that's true. But the systems are still. We're still very much involved in these.
Well, of course,
systems.
yes,
And
yes.
how do we navigate these things? How do we train these folks in making the most out of life? Because yes, there's a lot of obstacles, but he still can have a good life if he learns how to adjust and adapt.
Right. And the more knowledge you get, the reading, sharing other people's experiences, the better equipped you will be to deal with
What
life.
are your thoughts on all this fashion and the way they dress and look and all this twist in hair and all that stuff, and see them shorts he has on, and he has on a sweatshirt and shorts.
It's a long sleeve.
He looks like a clown, Bishop.
Well,
But what are your thoughts on
he looks
this?
like a privileged grandson.
What are your thoughts on these young folks and their are they crazy? What would your father do if he could step foot in 2024?
I think that would be a problem. But that goes on.
We would all be
I
going
don't
to
even
hell.
talk about that stuff anymore because hairstyles and dress styles and makeup styles. I don't even deal
Why
with
not?
that anymore. Well, because this is one of those things. When you reach a certain point in life, it's no longer important to you.
That's good.
So you just it is what it is. I'd have to go home and start with my wife.
Wow. Hope she's at the retreat.
She has a hairstyle that I was never happy with.
She got a Jerry curl recently.
No, not a Jerry Carroll.
Okay.
Sister locks.
Sister locks.
Yeah, Sister locks. I don't think she did the Jerry Carroll thing, but she did Sister
You
locks.
don't have
thing.
Activate on the back of your couch.
No,
Okay.
not from her.
That's
I used
good.
to get that from members of the church.
No, really.
And so I stopped inviting them to my house. But no, you're right. But again, things like that are not important enough.
That's what I've
If you
come
don't
to
like
discover.
them,
Right.
they're not worth fighting
That's
about.
right.
You just let everybody do what they're doing and go. Like, for instance, I wish I had brought some scissors here today, but Camille would be offended.
I think Camille did that.
Yeah, I know. That's why.
Did Camille do that?
Yeah, she twisted them. And so-
Camille, she
Yeah.
twists his hair and
See,
Well, they're locked now.
they're locked.
They're locked. Yeah.
and that's even worse.
But
So I think I'm gonna have to deal with this Camille situation because any future wife will lock your hair.
well,
I mean, no, I'm being facetious.
Right.
they
Sorry
lock
about
on
that.
their own.
Yeah,
I
that-
twisted them. They stayed twisted and they just locked on their own.
That's cool.
Thanks.
So these Bishop, you gonna let Denise lock your hair up?
No.
I remember for a long time when I was a kid, he had this one metal brush that he
Yeah.
loved that he would not let anybody.
Right.
And he used to always use this stuff called Wild Root.
Wild
and
Root,
between
right.
Wild Root
Right.
and his metal brush, that was his whole hair routine.
I don't know what happened to that
And
brush.
if anybody touched that metal brush, there would be you know what to pay because he loved his metal
I don't know what
brush.
happened to it.
I think I took it.
You Oh, you serious?
I probably did.
Oh,
did.
I ain't gonna want it back.
Yeah.
I bought that brush back in 1971.
Where do you get a metal brush from?
Well, just the handle part was metal.
Oh, okay.
It was like a
The bristles.
Oh.
See, that's the education. Oh,
No,
gotta
metal
read,
bristles.
son. Gotta read.
I do read. I didn't.
No, it was actually it was aluminum. So
That's metal.
Well, yeah, but very lightweight. But it had high quality bristles, and it was the
So
bristles
nice
that I
brush.
liked more than anything else.
Yeah.
Now I have replaced it, but it's not metal, but I still have the same bristles.
Then he used to come to church with his pick and had a fist on it. And he was having the back of his hair.
No, I didn't. No, that's what the brothers did.
It was interesting.
But see, that was considered a weapon.
What?
That pick by the broader community.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh yeah, they would. Police would harass young black kids for having that because they saw it as a matter.
But nowadays, as the law stands now, anyone can have a gun because it's constitutional
Right,
carry.
right.
So it's completely flipped.
Right.
We're living. I mean,
But
it's
it's just like I know tons of young black guys who went to jail, who are in prison today for marijuana
Right.
that now they can buy at the corner grocery store.
It's legal. In fact,
You know?
I think it's either UMSL or one of these colleges that are offering courses on
SLU has it, yeah.
That's his major, as a matter of fact.
No, cannabis science is not my
cannabis
major.
science. How to grow it, how to market. In fact, Missouri, we are one of the leading states in terms of revenue from marijuana sales.
Well, I can do you one worse than that. Well, not worse than that, but just as bad. When we had our convention here in St. Louis, there were bishops who asked me to take them to a cannabis store,
Oh, where's
and I refused to do so.
my?
I said, no, I'm not going to do that.
That's crazy.
Things have changed. Standards have changed. We live in a whole different world. So you gotta
That's
deal with it.
crazy. And how can we harp on or get on young folks
Right.
who are doing things, and you have folks who are supposedly in the leadership
Established within the church.
and see nothing. What's what's that guy in Atlanta whose father was a bishop for the AME Church? He was a good preacher. Father was a bishop. He had that little spider, the motorcycle.
John Bryan.
Yeah, Brian, his son
Yeah,
grows cannabis on the grounds of his church.
yeah. He
or
took
was talking
over,
about he wanted
took
to
over
grow.
Eddie Long's church.
Right, he took over
Yeah.
Newburgh.
And I know he talked about that.
Right.
I don't know that he ever did it, but I would
But
not.
he mentioned that.
Yeah, but I would not put it past him
Yeah.
to do that. But again, that's a whole different.
Jamal Bryant.
Jamal
thank you.
Bryant, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I mean, it's changed.
It's changed a
and
great deal.
and what has become accepted has changed. So it's not that regular traditional moral spirituality has become more conservative. Is that everyone else has left what
Yes.
used to be consensus.
And the people who are hurt most are those who are trying to live righteously.
Right.
But there's a text in the Bible that says, if the foundations be destroyed, what shall the righteous do? Now notice, it didn't say, what shall the populace do? What shall the majority do? What shall the righteous do? The people who are hurt most with these broad and moral concepts and this gross lack of integrity within the operation of the world and the church are those who are trying to hold on to the standard of righteousness. We're the
We're
ones that's
caught
being
between
hurt.
two.
Yes.
Now, did you ever think Eric Jr. would become a preacher?
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
Well, I mean, because he comes from over 1,000 years of preaching in his background.
Wow, and 900 of those years are his. Over 1,000.
No, now actually it's probably more than that. Back maybe 15 years ago, I compiled some data on how many years of preaching were existent in the Battle family, and of course I took our father, all of our uncles, our grandfather, all of his brothers who preached, our great grandfather, and your great great grandfather, and then all of the cousins and first cousins, second cousin, third cousins who preach. And back then, I had over 680 years of preaching in our family. Now, that's been 20 years ago. So I take all those people who are preaching and then add new people like Roscoe into that group. I don't know what the number is now, but it's got to be over 1,000 years of preaching.
Wow.
Within our family. So now this is going to sound sexist. So a male child born into the family, the probability that he's going to become a preacher is probably very, very high in terms of percentages. So if he had not became a preacher, then I would have had some concern as to what are you doing?
You talking about me?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah. Because I mean, now the one person that I did not think would become a preacher was your father, because he tried to stay away from the whole preaching.
I was too real.
Yeah.
I was too real.
But when finally, as a freshman in college, it became evident that he was going to be a preacher.
He's a pastor. I just preach. I'm not going to be a pastor. He's a pastor. I just preach, but I'm not going to be a pastor. That's the difference.
Oh, so we need to change your name to God,
No.
because you can now say what the future holds.
No, I'm just saying.
Because only God
That's
can
right.
make that decision.
Gotta read, son. Pick up a book. Gotta
Eric
read.
F. Battle.
Them locks are too tight. Them
AKA
twists are too
Roscoe.
tight. Loosen them up,
You
son.
can't make that decision. You don't
I
have
know.
that
I
prerogative.
I know.
See, God reserves that prerogative.
There's a storefront church with your name on it.
Yeah, you don't have to do that now.
But what type of ministry have you know? What type of ministry does he have? What's his
Roscoe?
Yeah. I mean, how is he's Gen Z? It's 2024. How not just him, but him. How is that ministry
Well, his
different?
ministry now is the ministry of learning what ministry is. And that's going to take a few years. And once he learns what ministry is, then God will announce where he's going from
But I
there.
mean, how will he be different in terms of how will ministry in 2024?
I
That's
get
what I'm
you.
saying.
I
Yeah.
see. Well, I mean, obviously, every ministry has to be relevant to its time.
Right.
And right now, I sit in the church, and I am so glad I'm not responsible for the preaching and teaching, even in this church anymore.
Why is that?
because everything has changed so grossly. I'd time to cuss everybody out.
You almost did on HOD Live. I mean, I don't,
because we have gotten so crazy. I mean, our ideas are crazy. I mean, people are doing things now that I heard about some people who would actually buy things secondhand. Let's say I buy a secondhand fur coat off Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
And I discover that this brand is sold at Dillard's. Well, Dillard's not here anymore. Macy's. I take it to Macy's and say I don't want it anymore. I want my money back. And then Macy gives me the value of that coat as new.
Wow.
Oh man.
And there are people who are in church walking with God who are doing that on a regular basis and don't even realize that they're stealing. Well, and then you try to preach so that your examples encompasses that kind of nonsense, but they don't get it. And they keep doing it and keep doing it. They teach their kids to do it, their grandkids to do it. And those are the people that you're preaching to. Those are the people that are part of your ministry on a daily basis. Well, I can only tolerate so much of that. You can tolerate more because, you may not even be aware, but the point is your mindset is more, it has more elasticity in it than mine does. And so I'm just glad I don't have to.
Did you hear his sermon, Roscoe or Eric Jr. preached in terms of mental health and
Oh,
dealing
yes,
with?
yes,
It's very good. I
yes.
thought he dealt with that from a very
that was-
raw.
Yeah, actually, I sent that to. I have a friend who's a psychologist in Chicago, Dr.
Name's
Karen
Dr.
Douglas.
Phil.
And so I sent it to her because some of the things you said were part of her conversations with me in terms of how we've got to approach this mental health situation. She calls it a crisis,
For sure.
a little bit more broadly than we do.
Right.
So I called her and I said, hey, I want to send you a sermon that my grandson preached. Well, she was just tickled pink. She thought, if I can, she said, how old is he? I said, then you were 20. She said, it's amazing that a 20-year-old can have an insight that a 60-year-old who ought to have it does not have it. Well, again, that's the result of your time. Your when I was a kid, if you had a mental problem, you were demon possessed.
Yeah.
And
so.
you would tie your hair up in locks and do all kinds of things like demons do. So and so I approached it from that demonic posture. Well, now in your generation, you can approach it as it really is and help a lot of people.
But there are still demons.
Well, there's still demons, but
Demons have not gone away.
But I think
no,
it's
they
like,
haven't. But
not
everybody
every
who
mental,
has their hair locked is not a demon.
Well,
and
most
that's
of
probably
them.
the point.
But I mean, I think there's
at least this one's not
right. There's a recognition that there are mental, because there were mental issues back then too.
Of course, right.
And
they weren't demons necessarily.
They weren't, but some were.
No, some were. Yeah.
Some. So I mean, demons are
demons
certainly
are demons. Yeah, but now they've gotten slicker too.
They have.
They're not as
they read more.
As raw. Yeah, of course
they read. Right. 52 principles of leadership.
Hope so.
Demons
and otherwise.
If they buy the book, you don't care who reads it.
They need to read it. But no, I think that relevance is very important in ministry, and as we see ourselves becoming irrelevant to the ministry that we're dealing with, it's time to step aside so a more relevant voice can take over. Now that's something that the old timers wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And there were cases where preachers were so out of touch with life, but they hung on and hung on. And I know churches, and I won't name any names, but I know churches that had, bustling churches that carried Sunday morning crowds of 2,000 people.
Wow.
But as this minister aged and aged and aged and became more ridiculous in his approach to ministry and his preaching, and the church dwindled from 2,000 down to maybe 200 before finally the Lord gave him grace enough to die. So my point is, we have to learn to pass the baton once we sense that our relevance has ended within this context. And I think that was what motivated me more than anything else, because there's no sense in me trying to deal with my background to a group of people who have no value. My background has no value to them, especially when there's someone whose background is more in tune with where they are. And so by the time you reach that point, then Roscoe will be ready to step in and do what he's doing. And so that's the way it goes. So,
now, can he pastor with twists then? Is that going to be?
Yeah, you can now.
Back then,
I've got a good friend down in Texas who has a thriving church, and he's twist everywhere, and he looks just like Roscoe, beards and all, except he's older.
Beards.
But this guy's doing a magnificent
Sweatshirts
job.
and shorts.
Sweatshirts and shorts. Yeah, he'll stand up and preach like that.
That's mental. Does he need a mental?
No, and there's no demons either.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's just and he's got a church full of people. He's reaching people that I could never have reached. I've gone to preach places, and the pastor will say to me, "Look, please don't wear a clergy shirt. In fact, don't wear a suit. In fact, just wear a short sleeve shirt and some khakis or blue jeans."
That's cool.
Why?
See, your blue jeans have creases in them, so I'm sure I'm sure your blue jeans are the equivalent of slacks.
So I wear khakis.
His blue jeans. Have you ever seen his blue jeans? They have cuffs and crease.
When I came along, our pastor, P.L. Scott, would not allow us to preach in what he called a two-tone suit.
What's a
A two-tone suit was a sports jacket and a pair of slacks. You couldn't stand in the pulpit and preach unless that jacket and slacks matched.
Even, could they be yellow?
No, it couldn't be
gold?
yellow.
I mean,
They had to be dark. They had to be black or blue or dark brown or dark charcoal gray. You couldn't wear light gray. You couldn't wear light blue. You couldn't wear tan or green or anything like that.
Going to hell.
You remember when they raised that big stink because Obama wore a tan suit?
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't preach in that. Nowadays, preachers preach in this. No, that's ridiculous. But again, it's okay because they're reaching their crowd, whom I could never have reached.
Right.
Really,
I think certain people can only reach certain people. I think certain people can only reach certain people.
well, yeah,
And
but you see, as the society become more and more out there, it's going to take preachers who can, even if you don't dress the part, at least you can tolerate it.
Yeah.
See, I can't tolerate it.
Yeah.
Because I'll stand up and say something. Like first, I was at the church preaching the other day, and a guy sit there doing the whole service with a hat on. And I had to literally fight to keep saying, "Fool, take that hat off your head. What's wrong with you? What do you think this is?" But it wasn't my church, so I just let it go. But it bothered the daylights out of me. Well, you probably wouldn't even notice he had a hat on.
He'd have a hat on.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, you may right. The preacher would say hat on.
I wouldn't notice, no.
And so that becomes part of the ministry. Ministry has to be in sync with the people to whom it is.
You went to preach one place, they told you could preach because you had a beard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I went to preach at one place, and I had my necktie in my pocket. I was going to put it on when I got in the church. The pastor stopped me from coming into church because I didn't have a necktie on, and told me anybody who would approach this church without a tie on will never be able to preach here, and sent me home.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was a different day. Now, that was Bishop Charles Poole.
Your sister Pat says women couldn't wear shoes with toes out.
That's true. I remember those days. They couldn't wear shoes with toes out. They couldn't do a whole lot of things. Mm-hmm. So you don't need a preacher standing up, preaching, trying to minister to people who are doing that, and then he has that mentality. Because he's going to cause injuries to those people. He's going to lambaste them. He's going to be unreasonable. He's going to cause all kinds of nightmares. So the best thing to do is, when the time comes, give it to someone who has more relevance. And then that person functions until it's...
What is your advice for pastors who are their ego is so tied up into their ministry that they can't let it go? They don't want to let it go. They don't want to let go of the limelight. Well, those pastors, I mean, obviously, if they won't let go, then they're going to kind of force God to have to make an executive decision. And when he does that, then there's a funeral a few days later. That's harsh.
That's the way it is. You know, what did Jesus say? Upon this rock, I will build my church, and even the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So, you know, there are a lot of pastors who are dead now because they wouldn't stop when the time came. Now, of course, they could say, "Well, I didn't know the time had come." Well, now you're saying you're so out of touch with God, you don't even know what God is. You don't even know the leading of God.
What would you say if they feel there's no one to turn it over? There's no, like your father had a son, you have a son, I have a son. What would you say to a situation where there was no...
Well, it doesn't have to be a son.
Well, I mean, even a son of the gospel, someone who they could turn it over to.
It doesn't have to be a son
daughter,
of your gospel. It can be a son of any gospel or a daughter of any gospel. So my point is, that lame, I got a good friend right now who every time I see him, he laments the fact that I need to quit, it's time to quit, but I ain't got nobody to turn it over to. And so finally I said, man, that's baloney.
What's he willing to pay?
Well, the point is, he's living quite well. He lives very well.
Like that, Roscoe.
So the church is able to afford a minister. The point is, it's just an excuse because he does not want to step out of that limelight.
Wow.
Now, and listen, he may not be in your backyard, but there are thousands of young men out here that are called of God, prepared by God, ready to take the helm, but we are too stubborn to quit, and we won't let them take the helm. And that has hurt the church. And by the time you get to be a certain age and your relevance is so antiquated that you start really wreaking havoc in the church, and that's when the devil is really happy now. Because you are destroying that church because you're too set in your self to let the Lord do what the Lord wants to do. And then finally the Lord says, well, you're a wonderful servant, you've been good, but I got to cut you off now. And so, and you know what's so funny about that? I've never seen a church where a pastor died where there weren't 20, 30, 40, 50 candidates applying for that church.
That's true.
So this nonsense that there's nobody out, that's baloney.
Right.
There are a whole lot, and I challenge any pastor who wants to retire, let me know, and I'll have your replacement there within a week.
Wow, you heard it here on HOD Live. You're a pastor watching.
I'll have your replacement there within a week.
Wow.
Now, they'll say, well,
part of that is we as pastors think that we're so integral and that no one is anointed but us and no one can do this but us. It's very egotistical. We don't understand that God, whatever God did with us, whatever button he pushed in us, like Elijah and Elisha,
right.
who in the next generation, he's not going to let the church fail.
No,
so he knows how
no,
to take the anointing to the next generation.
Right. And he can do it, and he will do it, and he has done it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He's done it over and over and over again. So no, that's just an excuse that we use to hold on to, in Trump's word, hold on to power.
Yeah.
And we just don't want to let it go. But what we have to understand too is it's not our church.
Right.
It's not your church. It's not your church. It's the Lord's church.
Right.
And you have not only an obligation to please him in the administration of his church, you also have the obligation to let him have control of his church. And there's a principle in our book now that talks about any church that will not allow God, or any church that will not allow God to have full authority in that church is not a church that's walking in concert with God.
And one of the benefits that I saw you doing coming up is having outside activities that took some of that need to be celebrated within this community way.
Yes.
So you do other things so that the day you walk away, you don't feel like you're leaving your identity.
Right.
You have something to walk into.
Something to walk into, yes. And that's very important. I try to tell my dear bishop friends that now, because a lot of them guys are in crisis because in the PAW at 78, you're forced into retirement.
Wow.
And unless you were grandfather then. Mm-hmm. But then I have colleagues who are 75, 76, 77, almost 78, and they're having a tough time. Because I go from being somebody to being nobody. No, you got to develop interest in life that will keep you busy every day. I used to, for instance, when I was active, well, I guess I'm still active in the RV community, but I served as chaplain for the National African American RVers Association. And every year we had what was an RVers convention. And as a chaplain, I would preach a sermon. We had a service every year. We had a Bible class on a different day during that conference. I did counseling for people. And so that week was a very, very, very busy week. And not only did it spill out of that week, it spilled over into the rest of the year because these people that I counseled with and talked with and ministered to during that week continued to call me throughout the year about their problems.
Right.
And so, again, I'm just as busy, except it's not at the House of Deliverance Church.
Doing all
it's at Nova. But all souls are whose? God said, mine. And so they're just as important to God as the members of the deacon board and the women's ministry who are out there in the name of retreat having fun and carrying on. I mean, they're still God's people. And so as a minister of the gospel, there's a lot of stuff you can do.
Right.
And you're doing it within the commission of God, except it doesn't have to be in a church where every week they got to hear a tired sermon from a tired guy that's irrelevant.
Hey. I'm the person attacked. Tired. So that's what you think my sermons are tired now?
But Batman is here.
No, he's not.
He is Batman. And you forgot Wonder Woman.
Well, no,
You can't get Batman out. Or it was Batman.
Her.
Yeah,
I got you. Well,
Cat lady.
I got to train her some more.
Well, I think that's about it, huh, Roscoe? It's time to end this whole wonderful discussion. It has been wonderful having this all male, all testosterone HOD Live. I hope that all of you all are having a wonderful weekend, and women at the retreat, I hope you guys are having a wonderful time. Eric Jr., thank you for being a guest. That Five Guys gift card I gave you for church is your pay.
That was mine already.
I gave it to you. Bishop Jesse Battle, thank you for your insight and wisdom. You were a hoot.
Yeah.
Well, what can I say?
All right. Let's tune in next week for HOD Live.